the spirit of watercolor. Welcome back, Linda here again, and I'm really thanking you today for joining me, and we're on this journey together. Another year has begun and we've been doing demonstrations on watercolor techniques, traditions, and today I want to talk a little bit about non-brush techniques. And the last video demonstration I did about warm and cool colors, we did use sponges, and I didn't really think about how some people may want to know a little more about that particular way of applying paint, which is a non-brush technique, which is what this video is about. Non-brush techniques, or some people quote unquote call them gimmicks. I find that calling them this minimizes their professional use in watercolors, and I find them to be very beneficial to watercolors. So, and many artists do, not just in watercolor media. So let's talk about that. What I've done today, and this may help you to get organized and to have these wonderful methods in your repertoire of art as well with watercolor. So I made up this tray. It's actually an old wooden tray. I think it was a wedding gift a long time ago that didn't have a lot of use. So it ended up in my watercolor studio and I put things on it. Well, yesterday I took it, cleaned it all off, got rid of things I don't use. Some of it was from oils, okay? And now what you have on here are things that I use, and it's on my table. I have a big long table, and when I think what would work better than a brush in this particular thing, such as covering a lot of area with, say, grasses, or with say trees and leaves on the tree far away. So that was where sponges, came into play on the last video. Now, those are on my tray, at least some of them are. I'm going to put more on. This tray is going to get more non-brush techniques as we go, because I'm updating it, and also you can do this along with me. So the sponges I have to start with, and then we'll talk about the other things on the tray. Of course, the natural sponges, which a lot of people use. You can find them at the Whole Foods kind of stores, natural food stores. There's natural real sponges. This one is from the art supply store, came in a bag of sponges. It's not a natural, it's probably synthetic, looks like a real one. The nice thing about this kind of sponge is it has different shapes and different hole sizes. So it's like more organic and, I want to say, random shapes and so forth. So it creates some really beautiful things when you rub it in your paint and press it into the paper. Then I have this other one that I kind of picked up. It's got tiny small holes. They're more the same size, more circular. And it's a nice sponge for small, little, tiny textures. Then the one I don't have here actually, but that you can acquire very easily, is go to upstairs to your home sponges when you buy them at the grocery store and cut them up. So if you use a sponge that you say clean your house with, it's got larger holes, different size holes, and it looks different than these kind. Okay, and then look around your house, look in the stores, you'll find different kinds of sponges as well. And they're great to use with your paints, with your watercolor paints. Okay, by the way, watercolors, paint artists have used these techniques, I still call them techniques, non-brush techniques, for a long time. Probably not since the beginning of use of watercolor, but as watercolor became a very much validated art medium, the Impressionists and people of that time used, oils as a validated paint, but, watercolors were sketch paint, but in time they became validated as a real medium in themselves. People didn't realize, I think, at first what all they could do, and they became more and more popular, and they're cleaner and not as, quote, toxic, so they say, although I think we're still working on that, and the art world is getting our paints and all our pastels and all the mediums to be less toxic, I guess. But anyway, here's some more wonderful non-brush techniques for us. Okay, So I wanted to talk briefly about, these are brushes, but they're not our typical watercolor brushes. Fan brushes, this is an old oil one of mine. I can use that for trees and say pine trees, and I have a nicer one in my on my art my brush holder. But I always keep one here too, just in case I need to pull another one. And it's a brush, but it's not your typical watercolor brush, so I do keep it here. And now here's some fun kind of toothbrushes. Okay, they're going to be sort of like the sponge where we press in these different shapes and textures. It kind of is a maximized, to me, dry brush kind of thing. But again, they are brushes, but they're not our typical, so I put them here with my non-brush technique stuff. Okay, of course, here's salt. There's different kinds of salt, so you might want to check into that as well. If you are someone in the kitchen who cooks, you know a lot about the different kinds of salt. This is a rock salt, and then I have a table salt, and I've been using it at the table there, so it's still on my table. But then there's different shapes of salts, more coarse salts, larger salts, and they create lovely textures so when you put the salt on, and we have a video of that, so go and watch that, and you'll see what I've done with some salt, and other people on videos as well, on YouTube videos and other watercolor instructors. What else do we have on our wonderful tray here? Okay, so I also have a palette knife. Palette knives are typically with oils, but you can actually use them in watercolor, and you can, grab paint and put it on thickly with this, and also just create some interesting effects. I have some books from Zoltan Szabo, an artist from years ago, and his books were very good at showing you how to use the palette knife in your watercolors and getting some really different kinds of looks with the paint with it. And we'll get into that in a video. I think we should. Okay. There's some interesting things like alcohol and glycerin. Here's some glycerin. My alcohol's upstairs because of other things that I've used, but that I use it for, like all of us, right? Those are great for cloud effects, and we'll talk about these kinds of things where you drop it into the paint on the paper and let this work and resist, and it does some really wonderful things with the watercolor. Okay, now I have these interesting dry paints from Daniel Smith. I don't even know if they still make these. I'm going to have to check into that. You might find them other places. They're like a dry powder paint. They come in these different golds and silvers. They're beautiful. I use them for some wonderful cosmic, effects. And I don't always use them with the brush. You can, but what I like to do sometimes is just sprinkle it on to wet on wet and let them just boom. They just spread, and it's just glorious. I have 4 of these. It's like German silver, and there's antique gold. I think there's gold and silver, German antique silver. I mean, they're very cool. Something different and exciting to get you, into your paintings and into your creativity, right? And let's do that together sometime too. I have Saran Wrap here. Saran Wrap is in another video, how to use this. It is a way of adding beautiful hard edge lines and shapes to your watercolors. I did use this in a video, and I also had someone comment on the video, and I appreciate that they were saying all these different things you can do with it that I have done, but we need to explore that a little more. So I would like to do another video where we just explore all the different shapes and things we can create with and how to get intense colors under the Saran Wrap as well. Wonderful thing to put into your paintings. You'll be surprised what you can do with that. Now we're getting through our little supply here of non-brush techniques. I also have on here these inks, because sometimes I like to incorporate black ink and or sepia, which I really like the browns in there too. Sometimes I will incorporate these into my watercolors or use them alone. They move and apply a lot like watercolors, and I do love them. But you don't always use brushes with them, and so I keep them here. I don't use them as much as my watercolors, so they're here. but you can use them with the good old calligraphy pen, right? And also, now this is exciting, this is on my tray because calligraphy pens are a wonderful thing that you can use to paint watercolors. They do some amazing things, and I'll show you in a video. There was an artist who was at a fundraiser selling her paintings using this. They were amazing, and I bought them, and she sold them for like $10 and $20. So I have some of her work, and I don't know if she knew how good she was, but it was something I'd never seen done before, so something we should try. Okay, the only other things left on my tray are a couple more things that are actually on my table, not always on that this platter, but is a technical pen, which I do use for masking fluid. And masking fluid itself is on my tray, and it's something where we're making lines and filling in and keeping the white of the paper, which is another technique. You can use a brush, but you can use technical pens or that incredible nib, which is in the masking fluid video, so check that out. But this you could also use for paint. You could put paint in this, and you can take there's a little wheel on it that you turn. And what happens with that is you can change the width of this so the line will be a consistent line of color coming out. Sort of like the calligraphy pen, but I can adjust the width of it, which is pretty nifty. And the other thing I don't want to forget to mention is our water bottles, okay? Some have a fine mist, some have more of a, larger spray, of drops shooting out at the paper, and you can push your paint around with this, right? Some people actually take a bottle, a smaller one maybe, or it doesn't matter, I guess, just another one, and put the paint in it, mix your paint, put it in there, and spray it on the paper, which is actually something I haven't done, and it might be fun to try just to see what we can paint with the spray bottle. Again, wonderful, cool stuff that happens. Watercolor is a wonderful medium, so let's try all these great things, right? Okay. I think I've covered it. Okay, so yes, there's room on here to put more things, okay? And again, I'm going to set this back on my table, and it'll be off to the side where when I say, okay, I need something different to create this effect, and what these, once we learned what all these do, you can always pull from these and add to your your paintings to get some more exciting, more dynamic shapes and just beautiful things happening in your work that are actually sometimes easier than just taking brushes and dabbing and and working very tightly and small, where it takes days to do. You can get the effects with these possibly even better and much more easily. So thank you so much for watching this video. I think that this should be a very big help to many of us as we join together in our watercolor journey. And I'm glad that you're starting in with me this year. This is a new year where we can have many new possibilities. And I'm always open to new things that I probably haven't heard of yet, because there's always something new coming down the bend for, watercolor artists, and how to use our wonderful paints. There's also some paints we want to look at in the future too. So thank you so much for watching.